The views and opinions expressed by Howard and Ridley through Reclaim the Room, including the podcast, blog, and social media, are solely our own and do not reflect the views or policies of any employer or organization. Content is provided for educational and informational purposes only and does not constitute legal, medical, or psychological advice. Copyright Reclaim the Room, all rights reserved. Today, we're continuing the shift we started last episode. We're still paying attention to what's showing up in the news and what's actually impacting teachers right now. But today, I want to slow down and talk about language, specifically how teacher distress gets named and what happens once it's named that way. We've already done a lot of groundwork together. We've talked about secondary traumatic stress, how it's different from burnout, and what it means to carry constant nervous system load in classrooms. Today, we're applying that lens as we look at two connected articles from the National Education Association. Welcome back to Reclaim the Room. I'm Ridley, and before we get started, take a second to subscribe, like, and follow. That's how these conversations move beyond just being heard and start making an impact. And we really can't do this alone. If you normally listen to us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, for the moment, those are not bringing in a lot of listeners. The majority of our audience is here on YouTube. And so from here forward until our audience, our subscribers, our tribe, if you will, grows, we're going to stick to just the YouTube version, which gives you two different ways to listen or watch. You can listen to it without video, or you can watch and listen. So just wanted to put that out there for you. All right, so today, the main article that I'm pulling from is called What's Causing Teacher Burnout, published by NEA Today in April of 2025. Now, this article focuses on what teachers are saying right now about why they're exhausted, overwhelmed, and seriously thinking about leaving the profession. Teachers talk about escalating student behavior, more and more responsibilities being added to their plates, a lack of autonomy, and political pressure, and a constant feeling of being blamed instead of supported. And the article is clear about something important. This isn't about teachers being weak or unable to cope. It's about conditions that have intensified while support has not kept up. And even though the article uses the word burnout, it also admits that burnout language can be misleading. Burnout tends to put the responsibility for recovery back on the individual. Toward the end of the article, it points readers to another idea that some educators and researchers believe fits better: demoralization. Now, the second article is called Teacher Burnout or Demoralization: What's the Difference and Why It Matters? And it was published by NEA way back in 2018. So this piece argues that what many teachers are experiencing isn't burnout at all, but demoralization. In this context, demoralization means being unable to do the work in ways that line up with your professional values and judgment. And teachers aren't described as lacking resilience or commitment. Instead, they're boxed in by policies, accountability systems, loss of autonomy, and outside pressures that make good teaching harder and harder to do. And demoralization is framed as a systemic problem, not a personal one. The distinction the article makes is pretty clear. Burnout sounds like depletion, like you just couldn't handle it. Demoralization is about losing the ability to do meaningful work because the conditions don't allow it. Teachers know what their students need. They know how to teach well. The system just doesn't let them do the work. Now, when you read these two articles together, they're actually telling the same story from different angles. The newer article captures what teachers are experiencing right now, and the older one gives language that shifts away the responsibility from individual teachers, and it shifts it towards the systems and towards leadership. Together, they move the conversation away from personal failure and towards professional obstruction. In these articles, demoralization is essentially the loss of professional agency and moral reward caused by external constraints. It shows up as frustration and discouragement when teachers are prevented from teaching in a way that match their training and their values. It's not framed as trauma or psychological injury. It's framed as interference with the work itself. And on paper, demoralization sounds better than burnout. It avoids implying that teachers just fail to manage stress, and it places the source of distress in the policies, leadership, and the systems. It sounds more respectful. It sounds more accurate. But here's where the framing really matters. When teacher distress gets labeled as demoralization, the responses that usually follow are morale-based. Districts roll out self-care professional development, teacher appreciation weeks, surveys, listening sessions, and messages about how valued teachers are. Those things acknowledge feelings, but they don't change conditions. They focus on encouragement instead of protection. What's missing is any real requirement to address cumulative psychological exposure. Demoralization language doesn't require training for managing crisis level behavior. It doesn't require structured debriefing after incidents, and it doesn't require limits on exposure or acknowledgement that classrooms can function as a high intensity environment. Responsibility quietly shifts back to the teachers to make use of what is offered. Neither of those articles lay out concrete support for teachers dealing with what they see, hear, and carry every day. The main article talks very broadly about improving working conditions and funding. The demoralization article suggests that naming the problem correctly can help restore professional integrity, but neither one directly addresses secondary traumatic stress. So the real question becomes, what would moving forward actually look like? Well, first, schools need structured debriefing time built into the workday. After high-intensity behavioral events, teachers shouldn't be expected to reset on their own and immediately jump back into instruction. Debriefing doesn't need specialists or formal facilitation. It needs time, consistency, and administrators who are willing to listen to what teachers experience and take it seriously. And you can't just say, well, today we don't need a meeting because we didn't have any major incidents. We didn't have a fight. No one was sent to the office today. That doesn't mean that teachers do not need to be debriefed. It should be scheduled daily, preferably at the end of the day, right before teachers go home, because this is another way to tell your nervous system to power down. Now, another thing is that teachers need training that acknowledges exposure, not just classroom management. So that means preparing for crisis behavior, understanding nervous system overload, and learning how to help the body stand down at the end of the day. This is not self-care. This is occupational preparation. In the last episode, I went over several different solutions, things that you can do on a regular basis. And because they are a routine, your body knows, your nervous system knows that the day is over The danger is gone. You are safe as you travel home. Now, third, administrative responsibility needs clearer boundaries. Listen, teachers can't be the primary managers of everything, right? They can't manage instruction, student behavior, parent communication, and emotional containment without support. Administrators need to own crisis response, parent communication during escalations, and follow through after incidents so that teachers aren't left carrying everything alone. Now, these solutions aren't complete. They're just starting points. They recognize that teachers aren't just discouraged. They're carrying a cumulative load that has a real psychological impact, and that impact deserves structure, time, and support. Well, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Seriously, what are you thinking about what we're talking about here? If you're listening, please let me know. Share this episode with someone that needs to hear it, that is struggling. And don't forget to like and subscribe. And as always, thank you so much for joining me and helping us to reclaim the room. Until next time. Reclaim the Room credits, otherwise known as Teacher Duties as Assigned. Bus Duty, Howard. Hallway Duty, Ridley. Cafeteria Duty, Howard. Recess Duty, Ridley. Field Trip Coordinator, Howard. After School Tutoring, Ridley. Required attendance for Howard and Ridley. Staff meetings, PLC, and every single one of those committees.